full as we are now, but I appreciate the supervisors here anyway. But I've always said when the crowd's here, I appreciate it coming, but you can see how that goes. So anyway, I guess this month and August will probably be like this. But anyway, I would still like to offer up a moment of silence before we get started and just reflect on the past couple weeks. What happened to our schools in Texas, which is really a shame. But I guess everybody will go through all the griefs and all that. And tonight I was going to propose recognition for our SRO officers, but I think that's going to be in August. But we, as a board, don't know how lucky we are to have them in our system and in each school, because and it could happen in Lawrence County, but if it does, they would save everybody in that school and the students. So with that said, I'll offer a moment of silence and then the pledge. Thank you. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call roll, please.
Caruso.
Here.
Daniel.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Dryden.
Here.
Hartsfield.
Here.
Jacobs. Here. Mabry.
Here.
Nodert.
Here.
Rochelle.
Here.
9 present.
Very good. All 9 present. Thank you so much, guys. First on the agenda is consent items.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think maybe proper order, I'd like to make a motion before we get started to add something to the agenda.
Go ahead, please.
Point of discussion, Mr. Atkins, I'd like for the board to consider where we're at with our finances on gas, with the prices of gas. Is the system equipped to handle that this coming school year? And if we could add that, just a brief talking point on that.
Very well. I think we probably won't have to add it. We can just have that under director's report. Would that be okay?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Anything else we need to add? Very well. Can I have a motion to approve A through E on the consent items?
Move to approve.
Got a motion to approve. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 2 report items. Under A, personnel report. And I believe that was in the packet. Does anybody have any questions regarding personnel report? Mr. Atkins, do you have anything to add about that?
Let's see, Mr. Chairman, I believe everything has been approved. We're through the process. You see a number of retirees. Mrs. Thompson had shared with me just yesterday, we're already at 77 transactions of people showing interest in the school system, moving from position to position. We have a strong interest from outside of the district for folks to work with us, so we feel really good about that. Our special ed interest is up this year, and we are hiring teachers daily, weekly with our principals. So right now we do not see an issue with staffing, but we're very pleased with where we are.
And that just shows another contestant to our system, that if somebody from outside that wants to come in is very good, and that speaks volume to our supervisors and you. Going on to B, director's report, Mr. Atkins.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to give you a report on our summer school. 1,232 students participated in the summer school program. That officially ended today. I think our teachers have done an outstanding job of addressing the needs of our students, identifying those students at the beginning of the year. We had 180 staff members participate. That includes bus drivers, teachers, food service, assistants, and that lasted for 14 days. So our folks really put in a lot of time and effort to provide our kids with that lost opportunity, that missed opportunity dating back to 2020. And special thanks to Mrs. Ridgway for coordinating that. She spent a lot of time, as well as our principals and other folks, to make that a successful program. 2 years in a row, we feel really good about that. Our building projects appear to be on pace. As far as the brick and mortar, there may be a couple of issues with some equipment at some of the schools, some coolers that have been ordered for months. They're telling us are now maybe going to be delayed a little bit. We still anticipate some delays in being officially moved into those buildings, but do not think it's going to be because of brick and mortar or construction issues. The County Commission approved our budget Tuesday night. We have received some data about test scores for this previous years that, as you know, that data is embargoed. We will share that when we can, but we do feel good about the work of our teachers this past year and our students. Our PVA enrollment is up. We've been asked by the recruiting agency if we would consider increasing our cap from 125 students to 150, and our focus again is solely on proven homeschool students, and so we're seeing that program grow. There's a lot of interest in homeschool participating in the Lawrence County School System's Pioneer Virtual Academy. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned safety at the beginning. I just want to remind the board and anyone that safety is the #1 priority in the Lawrence County School System. School leaders, SROs, do a tremendous job of ensuring safety daily. They're up, they're moving, they're inspecting. As always, though, there can be room for improvement. Mr. Tucker and I will be meeting with Lieutenant Dorning this summer to address some things that we want to see done differently and improved on. But overall, our folks do an outstanding job. Our teachers understand the safety protocols that we have in place. But we can always improve. We should not let our guard down. I don't believe we are, but we can always improve on things that we're already doing. But those tragic events remind us daily why it's important to do the simple things, the small things daily to ensure schools are safe. And Lawrence County teachers, staff, principals, SROs are doing that. And to address Mr. Daniels' request on fuel costs, we were very much aware of this issue dating all the way back to the summer when we saw slight increases. Our diesel fuel budget for next school year, we've increased that $175,000, and our gasoline budget, an increase of $30,000. So we're looking right around $450,000 in increase, up significantly from where we were. Now, is that enough? We don't know, but we did address that on the front end. Mrs. Elledge and myself sat down and discussed that. So we've done what we can do based on what we know at this time.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Michael? Very good. Moving on, executive committee approvals, and there was 10 of them this past couple weeks in between last, one was New Prospect School overnight trip for Beta Club. 2 was Summertown High School overnight trip cheerleader camp. 3, Summertown High School overnight trip baseball state tournament. 4, Loretta High School overnight trip baseball and softball state tournaments. Number 5, David Crockett School storm repairs. Number 6, Lawrence County High School gym roof repair. 7, change order for E.L. Kaufman UDL classroom roof. 8, a change order Summertown High School cafeteria floor. Number 9, change order Loretta High School sewer system pipes for the gym. And 10, work booked for summer school. Mr. Atkins, do you have anything to add to those?
No, sir. I think the weekly update has addressed those, but I'm happy to answer any questions if the board has them.
Are there any questions regarding them 10 items?
I think it's read that. Is a high school gym roof, has it been repaired?
I don't think it's been completed. It's not leaking, but there's still some work to be done there that we're working with the insurance company.
What about the floor? How much damage did it do to the floor? What's got to be done to fix it?
There's some significant damage on the south end of the court, some bubbling, not buckling yet, but there's going to be some damage there that we have submitted pictures to the insurance company addressing some of our concerns, but there's some damage.
Anything before we move on? Thank you. Item number D, Legislative Network. Brenda, do you have anything to
Nothing
add?
at the moment, but I am going to summer law. Maybe I'll have something new to.
Good deal. Mr. Paul, do you have anything to
Well, the
add?
United States Supreme Court handed down a decision today that may ultimately impact you and how you address things. They ruled that it is unconstitutional to prohibit the carrying of a handgun for self-protection outside the home. Previously, you could have a handgun inside your home, and Justice Thomas and 6 other members of the court have now ruled that you can carry a handgun for self-protection pretty much anywhere you want. They've acknowledged that there are certain places where you can't do it, but nobody knows what they are to do. So I'm assuming, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, so. But I'm assuming that one of those places will be school. As you know, you've been protected by state law from people carrying weapons on anything that school has. I have no idea how this is going to affect that. But this is a monumental decision to allow people to carry handguns outside the home for self-defense. And of course, the Second Amendment, it means the state's going to have a very difficult time monitoring or checking up on that going forward. So that's something you just need to be very aware of in your future.
Very well, thank you. Anybody have anything to add to that? And as Brenda said, summer law is coming up. Do you have dates for that?
23rd and 24th
Okay.
of July, isn't it?
And if anybody wants to register for that, just talk to Michael. Yeah. Going on to E, LCEA. Is there anybody here for that? Okay, we'll move on to item number 3 for consideration, discussion, and action for budget items. We have a janitorial products bid.
So this was a bid that was opened just last week, and it's our janitorial products for district-wide for all of our schools, hopefully for the entire year. So we're just asking for approval. There's multiple items on there. Total bid, $127,832.
Move to approve.
I got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a motion to approve and a second. Are there any questions regarding this bid?
Is it similar to what last year's was?
Yes, sir.
Any other further questions? Please call roll.
Caruso.
Aye.
Daniel.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Dryden.
Yes.
Hartsfield.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Mabry.
Aye.
Nodder.
Yes.
Rochelle.
Yes.
9 ayes.
The motion carries. Moving on, item B, floor care products bid.
This was opened that same day, and it is for stripper and wax for our schools. Most of the schools had products to begin. Once summer school was complete, they could start doing some stripper and wax on the floors this summer. This is just to replenish their inventory and keep them working through the month of July. So $18,258 we're asking for approval on.
Oh, we approve that.
I got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a motion to approve and a second. Are there any questions? Please call roll.
Caruso.
Aye.
Daniel.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Dryden.
Yes.
Hartsfield.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Mabry. Nodder.
Yes.
Rochelle.
Yes.
9 ayes.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 4, personnel items. Under A is special education positions. Mr. Atkins, could you elaborate, please?
Yes, sir. This is a request from special ed through a grant that they've had, and that grant will expire after 2 years of use. And Mrs. Moore is simply asking to use the grant to hire a special ed secretary funded entirely from the grant.
Thank you. I will take the entertainment of, have a motion on both of these instead of separately.
I'm going to approve both.
Second.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. I guess we could have done a voice. Any money involved, or do you know, do I need to backtrack?
I would. I would
Okay,
just say.
my apologies, so I'm taking back all the ayes and have a roll call, please.
Caruso,
Aye.
Daniel,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Dryden,
Yes.
Hartsfield,
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Mabry, Nidert,
Yes.
Rochelle,
Yes.
9 ayes.
Very well, motion still carries. Moving on to item number 5, and policy items for consideration and discussion. Since there are so many of them, I will entertain the motions or questions before we have a motion to approve all of them. So, at this time, does anybody have a question regarding any of the items on the policies?
Mr. Chairman, I have a few.
Go ahead, John.
Mr. Atkins, direct your attention to policy 3.202, emergency preparedness.
Yes, sir.
The change in that policy, I'm assuming all the changes are highlighted. Yeah, there it is. So at least once a year, we're going to be doing a remote learning drill. So my question was is this going to be a system-wide, one-day-a-year drill, or we're going to do this per school, or what's the plan there for this once-a-year remote education drill?
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. I believe it is just kind of what you call a tabletop exercise, where we might be addressing how and when, if we had an issue in school, what are our procedures in place, what policy or protocols would we have as far as a remote academic day. I think we've got enough experience in that already, but we would just have to review that. Would we go to all online learning for 2 days because of something? How we would go about doing that, how we communicate that. I think our past practice addresses that. Several of our schools have had individual remote learning days due to illness.
Okay, so just a simulation type drill.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Next, I'll draw your attention to policy 3.218, surface animals, I'm sorry. And so I'm assuming with our brief conversation beforehand, as all of these policies, these come down from the state. But do we feel confident that under the work or task provided by service animal, that is inclusive, all inclusive of everything, or have we left anything out? If you would scroll up a bit, Jessica.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, scroll down, yeah. So you can see 1 through 9. It's assisting individuals who are blind, alerting individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, providing nonviolent protection, which I'm kind of curious as to what falls under that description. Pulling a wheelchair, assisting an individual during a seizure, alerting individuals to the presence of allergens, retrieving items such as medication, providing physical support and assistance with balance and stability, helping persons with psychiatric and neurological disabilities. Is that like, that number 9, is that like those with
I'm going to ask Mrs. Moore, special ed, this falls in her area a little bit more.
Sorry, if you can repeat what you're.
I just, they're hard to read, on the board, there are 9 listed items that these service animals, if they're providing this work, that we are going to allow. And my question is this all inclusive, or are there going to be those special occasions that we don't have it included? And then also, is this for everybody who comes onto our property? And then I guess a step further than that, how do we know, how are we vetting when somebody shows up for a basketball game that they have a service animal? I'm ignorant to that. Is there a card that they carry? How do we follow this policy? as a system?
So there's only certain questions that we're allowed, and they're in the procedures, that we're allowed to ask about a service animal. This procedure was written specifically for special education, but it would be all-inclusive for any student or any staff or faculty that had a service animal. They are supposed to have training. We're not allowed to ask for certificates or who trained the dog or anything like that. There are specifics in there. The Department of Special Education looks at the difference being whether a person can provide that, as to if it hinders the child's independence. So if a child can be more independent with a service animal under these categories, then we have to allow that. But we look at it as on a case-by-case basis. It does not include people coming in for like activities and stuff in our specific policy and procedures. However, those rules and guidelines about what questions we can ask and stuff are covered under that.
So this is more, ADA cover this,
Yes,
Americans
sir.
with Disabilities Act, so it would fall in line with that. And Mr. Daniel, it says examples of work or tasks include but not, are not limited to. So to answer your question, there may be more, but these are just some.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll try to go quick, Mr. Chairman. I
That's
apologize,
fine.
but,
That's why we're here.
4.6, grading system. So I'm just curious, I need some understanding of why, and I think it's already like that, but right there, Jessica, a grade of 50 shall be the lowest grade recorded. So if we have a student that doesn't do anything all year, doesn't turn in the first assignment, doesn't do anything, at the end of the year, his report card is going to show a 50? Is that what I've just read?
Yes, sir. That's been a in policy and practice for several years. At one time, the 50 is what you had to have to get into credit recovery programs. And so what we were seeing is that students did not meet the 50, therefore they could not earn the credit, and it was leading to a higher dropout rate. So this was a measure put in place when we were struggling with graduation rates to address.
But in essence, we're giving kids something that they didn't earn.
For the first 9 weeks, you can put a 0. The second 9 weeks, you can put a 0. But the final grade,
Final grade, we had to put a 50,
you can put a 50.
which is, again, giving kids something that they didn't earn. Okay, moving on. Policy 5.701, substitute teacher. I just need an explanation of what this highlighted section means. I couldn't understand why, this July 1, 2011 through July 1, 2016, this applies, but it doesn't before and after that.
Do we know why that would have been? Is that coming out? Is that why we have that?
The strike through comes out and the highlight goes in. What's the number again?
5.701.
Number here, which is probably going to be a Tennessee code.
This has to do with the new law about retired teachers coming in. That impacted several policies, which included the substitute teaching, where retired teachers can come back and withdraw their retirement and work, still get a certain percentage of salary. That impacted several of our policies.
I mean, I'm not saying I disagree with any of that. I just needed some clarification and understanding. But Brian's statement there, but why is it limited to July 1, 2011 to July 1, 2016?
Because it has to do with their license expiring, teacher license that they only expire after so many years, so this would have impacted these people here, where they can draw if their license expired during this time. It would not impact it getting paid as a licensed teacher, basically. Other teachers that retire after that, their license would be extended longer. It's not going to cut them off if they retire during that time, and they retired and their license expired. They can come back and still get teacher pay as a substitute.
So the right way this is written then is about every 4 years, we're gonna have to revisit this and re-update this policy for these retired. Because in 4 years from now, this date range is gonna be different.
Is this not Mr. Chairman, is this
These
not?
are TSBA policies. These are.
Yeah, and
But is this not a grandfathered clause group when they did this new legislation
Yes.
having to do with this? That's what
I
I
believe so,
understand, but
yes,
I may
yeah.
be totally wrong.
Up here, John, is the Tennessee Code Annotated. I know it's small there, but that section B, this subsection only applies to retired teachers who are retired after 2011 through 2016.
Okay.
I don't think it'll be every 4 years, Mr. Daniel. I don't think it will. I think it's grandfather clause in this group in because of some circumstance. I don't know.
Some circumstances special to
About
this
certificates
group.
expiring or whatever.
Okay.
They've changed the laws about, and I don't know what, Ms. Thompson would know more about the licensure, but they've changed where the teacher license at one time lasted so many years. Now they last, everybody's on a different cycle as far as when their teacher license expires.
And Mrs. Cope, did you have something to say about this? I know you were involved in it at some point.
So I was just looking back to see what TSBA sent us, and they said the reason why they looked at this was because of the vacancies across the state. That's why they came back and looked at this to see if people that fell in that date, if their license expired, we would still be able to pay them teacher pay because of the vacancies.
So this is allowing us to pay retired teachers whose licenses have expired, but they're still able and willing to come and sub for us. We're paying them full teacher pay for the days that they're sub. That correct? All right, I've got just about 3 more questions.
go ahead.
4.303, supplements. Now, I have had a conversation with Ms. Cope prior to this meeting. The second to the last one, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, that right there, athletic supplement.
Couldn't find it.
So this policy is directing how many coaches, head and assistant coaches, we as a system are going to allow for our athletic programs. The first portion of it is for 7 through 8 middle school. The second portion is for the high school, 9 through 12. My question is, and the question I posed to Ms. Cope, was in the high school section, we have basketball is allowed 1 head coach, boys 1 head coach girl, 3 head coaches or 3 assistant coaches each. You scroll down just a little bit, there you go. Softball and baseball both have 1 head coach and 2 assistant coaches. My question to Ms. Cope was, where did these determinations come from? Because when I look at the numbers, there's not that much difference between a basketball athletic program and a baseball athletic program as it concerns students, bodies that are having to be coached and or supervised. And I also question then the cheerleaders. I propose that the cheerleaders ought to have an assistant coach. I don't like to leave an adult alone with any sport group, but I just question. Ms. Cope says she wasn't real sure where these come from. Mr. Atkins says that these numbers have always been there, but I challenge the board, just because something's always been there, does that mean that that's the right thing to do? I don't see the difference between baseball and basketball, while one deserves 3 and the other one only gets 2. Yeah, I just challenge these numbers.
What we'll do, Mr. Daniel, is run an analysis of what it would take or what it would cost the system to add those positions and see if it's something that we could do. I think every coach would tell you they always want more coaches.
I may be out on an island. I mean, if the board, anybody on the board has something to argue on that, but I just don't see that this is fair across the board. And again, I'd like to propose that I don't think any athletic department should, or athletic program should be solely one person only. I think that's opening ourselves for some risk.
I'm sorry. I'm kind of in agreement with this, John, but I mean, if this is the way the board sees it, that the policy should be, so be it. But my concern of the answer with John and with Michael is, well, it was always like that. It's always been like that, so that's what we went with. So until now, until we bring it up, well, you know, it's always been like that. So now we're challenging, so let's divulge, or let's get into more detail of why we have those. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
you know, and I'm not questioning why it's
Exactly.
always been this way or
Exactly.
whatever. But just because it's always been that way, that I will argue that just because something's always been there doesn't mean that we don't look to change it.
So I would make a suggestion to anybody that makes a motion is to omit S, if we want to further study it.
Mr. Hartsfield has a question.
Go ahead, Nikki.
We're talking these assistant coach, John, you're saying in the softball, they should have one head coach and 3 assistant compared like to basketball? Is that what you're saying? They need one more?
I'm saying we need to be fair.
Yeah, okay. I got a question. Assistant coaches, what about volunteer assistants? Are they considered as an assistant coach, or are we just talking about the ones that being paid from?
I believe
What are we talking?
What I'm talking about and what I read this policy is for those who are receiving supplements. Does that answer you? I mean, from my standpoint.
Yeah, just know
Says
how many
supplements in
assistant
the
coaches.
policy. It says supplements in the policy. So I'm assuming, like you, they all do.
Yeah, so, Mr.
So, question, if they have 3 assistants and one of them's a volunteer assistant, is that gonna count as,
No,
it wouldn't
not
count?
according to that. This is only referring to
See what
those
you're
who are
going.
getting paid in the school board to be that assistant. Mr. Chairman, then, you know, maybe we can make that motion to eliminate this for further research and vetting out.
Well, yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I would think that by holding on this policy, it also is affecting some other things within this policy as far as compensation and adding some additional sports. If I'm looking at this correctly, the supplement or the allotment of coaches would be something that we could address later on. I'm not sure, I think in the policy somewhere there's language that may allow the board to come back at a later date and add, or at the request of the director, add supplements.
Okay.
But I would caution the board on holding on this, because there are some folks in here that are new to coaching, or new positions that we're funding, and also athletic directors and some other language that.
This policy is going to fund,
Yeah.
going to approve for their funding. So is that something that we could do then, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Director, is if we approve this policy, that next board meeting in August, you could get this looked at and get some changes made to it, and let's revisit this policy in
I would
August?
assume so. Are you correct? Is that correct? Mr. Mabry, you have something?
Since we're on sports, what, is there a scheduled time that we're gonna have our recognition program this year? I haven't heard anything about it. We've had several teams from across the county that participated and won state tournament things, and I was just wondering, I haven't heard anything about it.
So we were gonna have it at the end of the school year, but since we were still in tournaments, we were gonna have it in June, and I know here we are in June, and I just haven't gotten with the director to schedule a time, but we will. And I apologize.
Is that a yes?
So we are going to have it, very well.
Yes.
Yeah, let's see that, yeah, let's don't let that slip through, because that's a pretty good,
Two more questions on policies, Mr. Chairman, and then
Go ahead, John.
I'll stop. Policy 6.20,
attendance.
attendance policy, yes, sir. So if I'm reading this correctly, the question I have is I think, Jessica, it's down in tier, talking about tardies. Okay. Right above the military service of parent and guardian. Page 4 of 7. Yeah, keep scrolling. Right there. Tardies and early checkouts accumulated in the day's absence. 3 tardies is considered an absence, and 3 early checkouts are considered an absence. So if a student is 5 minutes late to school 3 times, they're getting an absence. And we're saying that 15 minutes of tardiness equates to an 8-hour day.
That is correct. That's what we're saying. Yes. 3 tardies or 3 early checkouts, unexcused, is considered 1 day.
And that's been a long-standing practice.
Brenda?
That's what I was gonna say, that's been in force forever. If you had, and I think probably the reason is coming in late like that can disrupt your classes and all, and they can miss schooling too. But that's not nothing new, that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Wright, go ahead.
I just don't respond to that. As a former principal, I fully support this. It gets the attention of parents who some parents, I will say, who neglect getting up, getting their kids there on time. So it's very important that it be this way.
And I think too, it is in line with career readiness and punctual and being to assigned place on time and so forth. I think it does help students to understand being early and being on time is essential to after high school and being successful. And there are some folks that doesn't matter, they're going to be tardy, but to a vast majority of students, they're there on time because of things like this.
Well, I'll keep my opinions to myself. Last one, Mr. Chairman, 6.409, reporting child abuse. Okay, the highlighted line, ensure that all employees working directly with students annually that they annually complete the child abuse training program required by state law. Just the definition of who does that include? Are we talking cafeteria workers, janitorial staff? Just how far reaching is this all employees?
Yes, all employees have to do
I'll help
this.
you with that, it's all employees.
All employees have to go through this.
If you are being paid by Lawrence County School System, you are going through this training.
You
Yes,
work
sir.
at this school building,
Yes.
whether you get paid or not. If
Yeah.
you work with the school system, you have to.
Do we do that for volunteer coaches?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Is that a true statement?
That's
Absolutely true statement.
No, you're saying we should be, but
No,
that's not what.
I'm saying the law requires you to.
Okay, I'm asking, is that what we're doing?
Are you asking the lawyer or asking the teacher?
I'm asking,
You want to know about the law, you want to know about the
I
education?
want to know about the
We
education.
don't do, all of our volunteers don't do this, all
They
of our
should.
employees.
The law requires them to. If they're not, they need to be immediately.
I will say this, as a volunteer coach, one of the things that I had to go through and do this past year, I don't know if it's what you're talking about, but it had a section that I had to test on for
Absolutely.
children.
Was that in the TSSA?
Probably so, yeah.
Yes.
But yes, there was a section that I had to answer about 5 or 6 questions on.
As far as our volunteers, just in general.
You don't engage with children without having this training.
And you probably have to be fingerprinted.
Well, that may be part of,
of.
well, I'm just saying, that may
That's what I
be
mean.
part of, like, there's a pretty, I don't know, it took me like 8 hours to go through and do all the testing and all that stuff, and there was a section on it, so that may be what covers volunteers. Maybe a different program than what the employees have to take.
Yes, and I wonder though if we need to follow up and see if the volunteers should be taking, according to Mr. Plant, the volunteers should be taking what our teachers are taking.
They need to have sufficient training, whatever that requires, and I would think that what the teachers are doing should be required of them, absolutely. And you are exposed if they don't. It's your responsibility to see that everybody that you allow to come in contact with kids have proper training. And if you don't, you're going to be sued for not doing your duty. So you need to make sure they do it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, and to the board, thank you for.
Thank you, great concerns, great concerns. Does anybody have any other concerns or questions before I entertain a motion?
I'd like to move that we approve these.
I got a motion to approve A through T. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion to approve in a second.
Can we add to that motion that we revisit the supplement policy 4.303?
It would have to be an amendment. It would have to be an amendment. Would anybody want to amend that?
Well, can I amend it?
You can offer an amendment.
You can offer amendment and you have to second.
I make a motion to amend Mr. Dryden's motion to approve all these and add to it that we will revisit policy 4.303 on supplements in the August board meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
So I have a second on amending policy 4.303 to revisit it in August. And I have a motion and a second. Any questions regarding that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Now, what, you're voting on the amendment?
Amendment, that's correct, yes.
Voting on the amendment.
That's correct. I voted, I apologize. We're voting on the amendment for policy 4.303 to be eliminated and revisited in August.
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. My amendment is to approve all of these policies, including 4.303, but to
Okay.
bring 4.303 back up
Okay,
in
I
August for
understand,
review.
I understand, all right. But if you do that, you won't need an amendment.
Wait.
Go ahead,
Your
Paul.
amendment is to change the underlying motion. So your amendment is to revisit 4.0, whatever it is, in August. That's really what you're asking.
That's correct.
And then the original motion will determine whether you approve everything.
Okay.
So your amendment is just to change it to review that.
In August.
That's what you're asking.
Okay, and the original motion is going to be.
Later comes later. Comes later.
Okay,
Yes. All right,
thank you.
So you're voting on the amendment to review whatever that number is.
that's correct.
In August, that's what you're voting on.
That's correct, yes. All right, Jessica, did you get all that?
I have
Can you
it.
repeat it, please?
The amendment is to revisit the policy 4.303 of supplements during the August board meeting. And so then the original motion
That's later.
Yeah,
is
that's
later.
right, yeah, okay. All right. So please call roll on the amendment, please.
On the amendment. Caruso.
Aye.
Daniel.
Yes,
Davis.
Yes.
Dryden.
Yes.
Hartsfield.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Pass.
Mabry.
Aye.
Nidert.
Yes.
Rochelle.
Yes.
8 ayes, 1 pass.
Now
Motion,
you're voting on the original motion.
that's correct.
With the understanding you'll revisit this issue in August.
That's correct. All right, any questions? Further questions? So the motion, please state the
mo-
motion again, please.
The motion was to approve policies A through T
That's correct.
as amended.
That's correct.
Except,
No, we're going to approve it, but revisit it in August.
she said as amended.
Okay, as amended, okay. Very well. Please call roll.
Caruso.
Aye.
Daniel.
Yes,
Davis.
Yes.
Dryden.
Yes.
Hartsfield.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Mabry. Nodder.
Yes.
Rochelle.
Yes.
9 ayes.
So motion carries. Just kind of back through and kind of explain what had just happened. All of these policies were approved tonight at the board meeting, and the amendment was to revisit policy 4.303, but it was still passed tonight. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 6, other items for the consideration. A, approval for school fees. Mr. Atkins.
You have some, Mr. Tucker? We haven't received any requests for school fees. The ones that we've approved in the past have been very similar, and there's no changes to any of those.
So if there's no changes, do we need to approve anything? Or no? So we're striking A then. Moving on to B, non-resident student fees for 22-23 school year. Mr. Atkins?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a continuation of what we started last year for students outside of Lawrence County who wish to be a part of Lawrence County. We do ask that they pay above the BEP allotment that matches what the county pays for a student. So if you come to us from outside and it costs us $10,000 to educate a child, we receive $8,000 from BEP, we ask them to match this local dollars for the taxpayers of Lawrence County.
Do I have a motion?
Move we approve.
I got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a motion to approve and a second. Any questions or comments regarding the non-residents school fee? Please call roll.
Caruso.
Aye.
Daniel.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Dryden.
Yes.
Hartsfield.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Mabry.
Aye.
Nodder.
Yes.
Rochelle.
Yes.
9 ayes.
Motion carries. C, library policy handbook. Mr. Atkins?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. State law passed requiring districts to develop a procedure for review of library materials. This came down and takes effect for the 22-23 academic year. It provides citizens, parents, students to challenge or question materials that may be or language in a book in a library. And again, it was required by law. Our librarians developed a manual that explains and is in concert with the law and provides that opportunity for anybody to challenge materials that are questionable in their opinion in the libraries. And the librarians did a great job of putting this together. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to ask those. And we've looked at this several times, and it complies with the law.
So I'm gonna suspend the rules for just a few minutes and take questions or concern before we have a motion in a second. So does anybody have any questions or concern regarding the library policy handbook?
I do.
Go ahead, Mr. Corey.
Who is the authority on what is allowed in or taken out of the library?
Good question.
So
That's a very good question. That is, of course, the unanswerable question.
So when you compare the language in the policy to the language in the law, a committee is to be established. Now, the makeup of that committee is not defined, and from what Mr. Tucker and I reviewed earlier, there will be more guidance on this in December. But there is a committee that would review the material and advise the director. At that advisement, still has to be age appropriate and within the mission of the school system. The material would be within the mission and scope of the school system.
Okay, so without a committee, Are we putting it in the librarian's hands right now? Are we putting it in the principal's hands? Are we putting it in your hands?
Right now, the material is in line with the standards of academic standards and connected with those academic standards. And Dr. Glass, if you feel comfortable speaking to this, you're welcome to.
So I think you may be going more on the line of not the adopted curriculum, but on what's included within our libraries. And right now, our librarians make those decisions and the principals sign off on those. And those decisions are based on, like the Caldecott author winners and that type of thing is how they are choosing the materials that they're adding to the libraries at this time. They make the decision and it is signed off by the principals. Is that what you're asking right now, Mr. Rochelle?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my concern is, and listen, when I first seen that, I thought, we're going to have a policy on how to act in the library, and then I started reading it, and I guess what threw me off was when you start reading it, it talks about people's political views and morality, and listen, my morality may be different from the librarian.
That's why I said it's not answerable.
It is, and it's a question that our librarians are very concerned about with the legislation that is out there, because you and I could both walk into any library and we could find something we wanted to complain about.
Sure. And I'm sure anybody can. But I guess my point is that kid brings home a book and a parent looks at it and there's material in there they don't want them to have. They come to school and they say, I want to yank this book. Who does that fall back on? And then the other side of that, somebody wants a book in the library that the librarian's moral standards won't allow them to put in there. I guess that's what I'm trying to see.
And it is, like Mr. Plant has said, it's a.
So there's really is there no answer to what you're saying?
No, it's what yours is.
Challengeable.
What yours
Either way you
right
look
is,
at
which
it.
one's right? That's the question of life.
So we do now have this, with this new law, we have procedures in place that if someone wants to come into the library and say, I mean, you go into a high school library, you're gonna find nudity if you go in the art section, correct? I mean, there's gonna be artwork in those pictures that have nudity in them. And, somebody could say, I don't want that in a high school library. So now we have at least procedures, a formal way for them to make that complaint, and then it would come to a committee to determine if we removed it or did not remove it.
Yeah.
Do we have to wait till December to get this committee?
No, we don't have to wait till December.
So as soon as this passed, y'all can work on getting a committee in
Yes.
July?
Yes, sir. But I do believe there is more guidance coming. There's been battle there about what legislation we passed, and some of it's been tabled, and I hope it stays there.
Mr. Royce?
So according to this, is the committee a committee of the board or a committee of the school system?
Or the public?
Or both, or a combination of the two?
And in the manual, it reads that it's a committee established that reports back to the director. How that committee is developed and who's on that committee and what are some of the review committee, there's not any guidance on what that looks like at this present time. So I'm presume maybe we would establish our own and use it until we have some guidance.
I would suggest to you all that you remember that you as a board have hired a director to run your school system, and that you charge your director with running your school system, and you let your director run your school system. That you deal with the issues you must deal with, of course, but that you let your director deal with these issues on a day-to-day basis. But keep in mind, you only exist right here in this meeting. Outside this meeting, you're just citizens of the community. You have no authority whatsoever.
Yeah, but also, Paul, my opinion would be if there is a board assembled, I would want that board at least one, if I had any influence, to reflect the morals of the people I represent.
Well, no question, but this is not a political issue that you represent anybody. This is a group of citizens, as I read the law, that are to be selected who will make these decisions, not you representing a group of people, but these people representing themselves and offering their own opinions of it to help make these decisions. Candidly, folks, I'm 78 years old. I went through about 27 years of formal education without this. Did very fine, thank you very much. You all did too. Not quite as many years as me, but to me, well, as my friend on the corner said, I'll keep the rest of my opinion to myself. But the legislature has required that you establish a committee of citizens to report to your director. And if you don't like the way your director does it, fire your director. He's the guy you've hired to run your school system.
I don't disagree with that, other than if it's a board made up of citizens, I think it would be important that, as a whole, to represent the value of the people that live in this county.
There's your director, he's the one that's going to help.
Yeah, but our one director doesn't have to represent the value of the people in this county. But if you've got a board, it might.
Making up the committee, I'm sure he'll welcome your input.
I'm not saying that we, as a board, select it. I'm just saying when we select that board, wherever it's made of, whoever it's made of, private citizens or people on this board, or whether it be people in the school system, that it be people that represent this county.
Tell the guy right there that he's the guy that's going to make up the board. He's the guy you need to be telling.
I didn't say that I wasn't going to. I was just saying
Very
that's
well.
what it was going to be done.
That's my point. He's the guy you hired to do this.
But I think the question originated is who makes up this board? That's where the question got originated. Is it citizens? Is it?
Yeah, he has the final decision who's going to be.
Based on the law given to him.
That's right. If we don't like that, we bring it up to him. Is there any more questions or comments?
I don't believe the horse too, but seriously, this should not be political in the political sense. And obviously, it's all political. There's no question about it. It's highly political. Hugely political. Heatedly political. But at least the legislature, I think, has acknowledged that the director is in the best position to appoint an apolitical group to help make these decisions from the parents of the people who are in his school system.
And Mr. Rochelle, reading this, as you can see on the screen, the fifth bullet that says this committee would make the recommendation to the director of schools and the Board of Education for further action.
Yes.
We would have final
Yes.
say.
Yes.
The board
You
would
always
have final
have that.
say
You always have that.
in what we would do.
As
So-
always, you're correct.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Go ahead, John.
I have serious concerns and problems with how this handbook policy is written. The verbiage in it, I'll draw the board's attention to page 7 in particular. It is in the public interest for publishers and librarians to make available the widest diversity of views and expressions, including those that are unorthodox, unpopular, or considered dangerous by the majority. All through this first portion now, I will admit to the board and to the public, I have not yet had the time to comb through all 37 pages of this procedure. I am very uneasy until I have more time to view this to say that I can support any of it.
One thing that I might make sure that you all are aware of, that this was an updated, already approved policy handbook, and it's updated with the current law. I don't know all the pieces. That's probably been in there for, I think the original date on the one that we had was 18 or 17, 2018, 2017. The librarians took it to update with this, to make it current with the new law that just passed. And I don't know that that makes any difference, Mr. Daniels, but I thought you might want to know that.
Can I get a motion to approve C, library policy handbook?
I make a motion that we table C until next month, and we have more time to review
That wasn't my
consider.
question. Do I have a motion to approve library policy handbook?
With the fire alarm went off on that one.
That was very appropriate. I agree. So once again, I'm going to entertain a motion to accept library policy handbook. With lack of a motion and a second, this policy is not approved. Now you can make a motion to revisit it.
I don't need to, we just didn't approve it.
So, Mr. Plant, the law requires us to have a procedure
Yes.
in place, and we've done that. If it's not approved, then
You're in violation of the law. Now, look, folks, legislature is way stepped over to require you to do a whole lot of things. This is one of them. They have micromanaged your system as they want to do so many other things in our life. With father-in-law, whom all of you knew, used to say that nobody stayed for the legislation session. That's more true today than it ever was. But the legislature has taken it upon themselves to tell you how to run your school system. And one of the things they told you must do is have a library policy.
But didn't Ms. Glass just say that this was an updated one?
Yeah, we have one, it's just out of date, it's not current with the current law.
So if we don't approve it, the update, the one we have now is in effect until we can revisit the
I've
one
not
that
read
we
the
have.
law. I'd have to read it to see if it's required that you update it or not. That would be, you're exactly correct.
Okay, so it's just like, just for instance, like the budget, if the budget ain't passed, we continue with the old budget until a new one is passed. So what I'm saying now is the old one's sufficient until we revisit this one here. Am I correct?
I do not know that, I have not read the statute. I don't know what the statute says.
Okay,
I'll be honest with you, I've not read it. I'm aware that it's there,
yes.
but I've not read it.
So when the one that is there now, does it have an expire date?
That's not the question. The question is whether or not the law requires you to do the updated
I see,
version.
okay, so if the law requires redo an updated version, what date? You don't have an answer to
I
that?
don't know the answer. I'll
Just
do
as
that.
long as
I'll
it,
find out.
okay. Will you please?
Sure.
I'll make a motion, since we're not in school. I'll make a motion that we approve this to come back, what would give us the time to come back and look at it and address it again in August to see if we want to make changes to this current policy.
I'll be
But-
glad to do some research and let you know what changes you are allowed to make to this policy.
So at this point, I don't think we need a motion to revisit it. It can be brought up again in August.
Right now, you have no policy.
We don't have a policy, so if they come, revise it, revisit it, we can also bring it up in August to that effect. Am I correct on that?
I don't know, I haven't read the law. I don't know whether the law requires you to do it now or gives you until later to do it.
Okay, does anybody,
But as of
Michael,
now,
do
you
you
have no
know?
policy.
No? Okay.
Dr. Glass, my question is to you, having worked with the librarians, the language at the front of this that Mr. Daniel referenced, is that a code of ethics or expectations of librarians, like a uniform code of what they're to follow, as an oath of some sort?
I'm going to tell you what I think that it is. I don't have it in front of me, and I do not know that at this time for sure. I assume that verbiage was given to them, but I don't know that.
So let me ask you this, Mr. Glass. Is there anything in this policy that you can bring out to us that's a change or an add-on to what the original one had?
So about 2 months ago, a representative from the librarian sat down with me and walked through that with me.
Okay.
That was 2 months ago.
Okay.
And no, sir, I cannot.
So since the 2 months ago until now, has he called your office or has he emailed you saying, what is your update on the policy that you have? Have you been working on it? Have you been approved it yet?
No, what I was saying is the librarians got together and worked on
I understand
this.
that.
And they sat down with me, one of them, and walked through what the changes and why they changed it and what the
Okay.
law. But that was
Okay.
at least a month ago, and I did not remember it. I'm
Okay.
sorry that I do not remember it. Not enough to present it to you, no, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
so,
sir.
I got one more one. So if you don't know all of our questions and you're not comfortable with giving us those updates, we see it here, but you're also saying, well, we also went on the original policy and now we're presenting you a new policy. So I think the board is wanting, I know I'm wanting the update or the added verbiage. And then, you see what I'm saying? Is that what go ahead, Brenda.
Well, I think from listening at both sides, and I've heard a lot about this on the news, that we really don't know what we're voting on until we get some further information as to how much time we have, exactly what we need to do. And my opinion would be to check a little further, even if you had to have a special call session to approve it if we need it now.
That was gonna be my next session. If we gotta do this before July, we can always have a special appointed session to just approve this one policy. But my concern is, do we need it tonight? Do we need it July? Do we need it August? And you don't know that, Mr. Plant don't know that, or Mr. Atkins don't know that. So if we don't approve it tonight, is somebody coming down from the legislative or federal saying, you violated the law, I'm doing this lawsuit? We don't know that, correct?
You can always check with TSBA and their lobbyists.
Okay. So, Mr. Plant, can you do that for us, or
Can I do what for you?
or check on this?
I'll read statute,
Yes, please.
and I'll be in touch with Mr.
Please.
Michael and tell him what I find in it, and y'all will
Please.
do if y'all can do, but
Please.
I can't imagine anybody will come down there and beat you on the head. That's not my point. My point is that the legislature,
Yeah.
more than it ever has in its history, is micromanaging every part of your
Agree.
life.
100%.
And therefore, they're requiring things of you that they have never required in the past.
That's correct.
And I don't know exactly what this requirement is, because candidly, I've not read the statute. So I can't really answer those questions.
Okay.
I can't imagine they're gonna beat you on the head in late August.
I agree.
But
I
I don't know.
agree. I agree. Does that suffice everybody's questions or comments?
Well, this may not be an answerable thing, but Ms. Glass, are we compliant with the policy we have?
Yes, I think that, and Mr. Tucker may know more about this than me, I think that the biggest concern here with the librarians was getting this passed, of course, before the July, because of the possibility of a challenge.
Yes.
As Mr. Rochelle
That's the
mentioned.
question.
So we are not going to have a challenge, well, I shouldn't say that.
Well, you're not if it's not a
We probably are not
policy.
going to have a challenge
Until school starts.
between
That's
now
right.
until school starts back. And, you know, we may not have a challenge 5 years from now in Lawrence County.
But if
Who
you-
knows? And we may have one August 1.
Candidly, I suspect that the changes to this policy have much more to do with challenges than
Yes, sir.
content.
Yes, sir, they
If
do.
the policy didn't, I don't believe they changed any, I haven't read it, but I don't believe they changed anything having to do with what you have in there. The question is how you deal with challenges.
That's exactly correct. It's
And I
about
think
what to
that's
do
what
with
all
the
this new
challenge.
stuff is about.
Okay.
Is setting up the committee and dealing with the challenge.
So if the whole policy doesn't have anything about challenges, you're not
Right,
gonna
it
get
never has
one.
been.
It is not
You're not gonna
written
get
to
one.
change what the biggest concern here is what's coming in. It is not written to change what's coming in.
Uh-huh.
It's written to handle if we have
If
a
something's
real
already there.
complaint
Okay.
about the content.
I see.
And that's the part that the librarians were kind of
Okay.
about, because, you know, they don't want to be challenged, they want everything in place. That's what the updates are, to handle challenges of what we have in our library, not to alter what we are choosing to
correct.
pull into our library.
So
Your
that-
kid brought home a book and it shows the Pieta and it shows, my God, Jesus is naked in it. I don't like that in this library. Now what are you gonna do about it?
That's right, and then the new policy state, and recognizes that.
He's been naked for 14 seconds.
Go ahead, Brent, Larry, I'm sorry.
So basically, the update that we're asking to approve is to procedural challenges and
Yes,
the
sir.
procedure to follow those challenges with.
Yes, sir. That's why I said the piece about that it was updating, because I assumed that verbiage that you read was in there. and
Already
has
in
been
there.
That's
That's-
not, it's not altering what the librarians are wanting to bring in or what they're gonna choose from. It's being prepared
How
if
to
we
deal
have
with
a
challenge.
complaint about what's in our library. How do we handle it? What do we do?
This
Michael,
is
go
still
ahead.
on the floor, I'm gonna move we approve it. I may not get a second, but
Michael, you got a comment?
So, Dr. Glass, if I'm understanding you correctly, the sections 1, 2, and 3 are currently in place. There hasn't been much change, if any, to that. What we're asked to do is address, starting on page 31 of this manual, what the process would be for someone to challenge some material.
And if you've been listening to the news, there were two, and I don't know enough about them to speak about them right now, because they're not on my mind and fresh, but there were two really huge pieces of legislation that some of you referenced about content within the library and how to challenge it. One of those got tabled, and one of them is still set there. I think part of it was, what would happen could happen to a librarian if it, and it scared them a little bit, but it made them, okay, we need to update our policies. So we have a procedure in place in case somebody shows up in our library and wants to challenge a book that we have in the library or content. So that, yes, sir, that's what it's referencing, is how to handle if you have someone come in and challenge it. It's not altering what's coming in.
Take
It's
the burden off the
handling.
librarian and put it on a committee who has to answer to you.
yeah, it's providing security for
Yes,
our
it is.
librarians and our administrators.
It is.
It's,
John, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and fellow board members, I had a personal conversation with my representative who was in the legislative session, Dr. Joey Hensley, and speaking specifically on this, had a good conversation with him. I still challenge the fact, I don't care that this policy has been in procedures, I'm still not in agreement with how it's written. And just because something's always been doesn't mean that I don't challenge it and state, but this flies over, the verbiage in this thing flies all over who and what I stand for and the people who elected me to this position. So I will not support this policy as is.
Very well
And I know my
taken.
representative has the same mindset that I had, because I had a discussion with him over that.
Are there any more discussions regarding this policy?
I want to say something.
Go ahead.
This handbook, this is, you might say, is this really the law?
This is
I
a
mean,
procedure
what I'm
based
saying
on the
is-
law. This is a procedure that you are choosing to follow based on the law, which requires you to have a procedure. The law requires you to have a procedure. This is a procedure that you have chosen, which is apparently one approved by the legislature.
Thank you, Mr.
So how
Plant.
would we
Go
change
ahead.
that? What I'm saying, how do we change the handbook?
I think we did change the handbook and we're denying it to be approved tonight. So they'll have to we have to revisit the policy and bring it back up if it's law. Am I correct, Mr. Plant? Moving on to item D, 2022-23 school academic calendar revision. Mr. Atkins.
Mr. Chairman, we had a meeting with our calendar committee, and in the discussion came up the request to move our graduation dates back a little bit later in the school year. Several high school teachers, career technical, mentioned the difficulty that seniors being out of class 2 weeks before the end of school is creating problems with instruction and being able to provide our students with the best learning opportunities, that we'd move those graduation dates back from the 11th and 12th to the 18th and 19th, and then school would conclude on the 23rd. I should say 18th, 19th, and possibly the 20th. Loretta is asking for Thursday, Lawrence County Friday, and Summertown High School on Saturday is proposed. So it would be moving them from the 11th and 12th to the 18th, 19th, and 20th. That would only give students Monday and Tuesday as a disruption, well, a little bit longer than that, but not a significant disruption to the learning environment with those seniors being in classes.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I have a question, Mr.
Go ahead. Well, let's get a motion and then a second.
Yes, sir.
Then we'll ask for questions.
I'll offer a second or a motion.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Go ahead, John.
Yes, this is moving this, how does that affect the athletic seasons? And do we have seniors who are going to be on the sports field the night that they're supposed to graduate, which is why I believe we moved them to the 11th and 12th to begin with? And then secondly, can you expound on the several teachers that recommended? How much recommendation has this actually had?
Well, it came through the calendar committee representatives who shared those concerns with us.
And I asked that question because just 3 years ago, I had a problem with this calendar committee, and we approved a calendar, and then I got bombarded in the public by teachers about what we approved on the calendar. And I approved it with the assumption that this committee went around and got the input from the teachers, and I later found out a huge percentage of the teachers that I represent never ever saw it. So I still question that practice. How many teachers, or is this a small handful that's speaking up for the school without actually talking to everybody in the school?
Well, I do know this, that it is impacting the career and technical programs a lot more probably than some others, but you do have some other classes that are impacted by it. Students getting out on May 5th, missing the 8th through the 12th, that is a significant decrease in time from when they graduate to the 23rd is the concern that they have. It does disrupt the environments of many of those high school classes, especially with mixed classes where you have sophomores, juniors, seniors, or juniors, seniors in a class.
All right, so I have a question to that. My question would be, number one, if they're done, why have them come? Because an 18, 19-year-old kid who's going to graduate in 2 weeks and he's done, I would imagine, I'm speaking for Corey, I would imagine I would be way more disruptive if I'm done.
If they're done, your education system's not doing its job.
Well, obviously they're done because they've been getting doubt. That's my point. And then my second question follow up to that would be, if they're not in there, it would be less students to teach. You think you'd have more time for one-on-one and whatnot? That's just a question because I don't know that answer. So
Back to the
I brought the hands up.
That was addressed and looked at. That was addressed and looked at, and there's not a state championship, but anytime you get into May, the scenario you presented of somebody being on the field on graduation night, that could happen at any time in May. It just depends on where the games fall, win, loss, that sort of thing, but the state tournament, the championship week, is not during graduation, the 18th and 19th and 20th. It does not fall there.
That's my question. None of these dates proposed for graduation is going to be between end and spring playing.
Yes.
Correct?
Well, the state
tournaments that take place in Murfreesboro.
That is the 22nd through the 26th. The
So
state
none of
tournament.
these will be affected.
Not
I mean, I've sat there and watched senior kids have to choose between graduation and playing in the finals of the state tournament, and that's not fair. We got it changed with the previous director, fortunately, and we don't need to go back to have graduation on those dates. I mean, you say, well, we're in it for academics. We are, but if a kid has put in the time and the effort to get to that level and we make them choose, that's not fair.
They could be playing on the 11th and 12th in a sectional that determines if they get to the state.
That's not state, though.
But as far as the tournament week, the state championship week, 22nd through the 26th. Graduation would be the week before that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
That is true. Graduation is the week before that, but let me speak on this for just a second. And last year, well, this past year, our students should not have graduated when they did. They should have graduated a week later. That was something that the calendar did not, we went to school a week late because we changed it. We were supposed to start the 1st of August, August 2nd. We didn't start till the 9th because of summer school. Well, graduation should have been put off a week. It didn't. So that's why our students got out 2 weeks early. So this calendar we just had is something that's not what we usually do. Our students don't usually graduate 2 weeks before our other students get out. So that's why we talked about going back and looking. They should be out 2 weeks before. I know they're done, I get it, I remember as a senior. But they still have a responsibility to, they have to stay in school until we tell them they can graduate.
So this proposed calendar will eliminate that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right,
yes.
go ahead.
So the teachers that have come to me about it, it causes an issue with your underclassmen because they save their days, and then once the seniors graduate, they're done, and then they have all their unexcused allowable, which we all know they're not supposed to be allowed, but allowable days that they can not attend school for the last 2 weeks.
And one thing that was mentioned this past year, we had students graduated who came back to walk the halls, or right around that, or some sort of
Yes.
around that. This proposal would have those students walking the halls, visiting elementary schools, the 15th, 16th, and 17th of those senior activities that they look forward to, and the elementary students look forward to. It does push it back. I think we might be the only district that had a 2 weeks before everybody gets out of school graduation.
We have a motion and a second. Please call roll.
Caruso.
Yes.
Daniel.
No.
Davis.
Yes.
Dryden.
Yes.
Hartsfield.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Mabry. Nidert.
Yes.
Rochelle.
No.
7 yes, 2 no.
Motion carries. Moving on to E, athletic cooperative agreements for 2022-23 school year. Mr. Atkins.
I believe these are our annual, but Mrs. Coe would like to speak to it.
But you've already approved most of our co-op agreements, but there were a few that needed to come in, that came in late, the bowling and the track, and so I just need y'all to approve those, because those are actually brand new. They are not a rollover from last year.
Move to approve.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Call roll. Oh, any questions, comments?
Yeah, state the motion we're about to vote on. State it, please.
Jessica?
It's to approve the addendum to the sports cooperative agreements to add bowling at Lawrence County High School and Loretta High School, and track at Lawrence County High School and Summertown High School.
Okay, thank you.
That answer your question? You good? Call roll, please.
Caruso.
Aye.
Daniel.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Dryden.
Yes.
Hartsfield.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Mabry. Nidert.
Yes.
Rochelle.
Yes.
9 ayes.
Motion carries. Moving on to item F, overnight trips authorizations. Mr. Daniels? Mr. Atkins, I'm sorry. Oh, Lord. It's been a long day. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you have before you is a request for the board to grant me approval to approve overnight trips from athletic competitions and state tournament, career and technical skills USA, overnight stays, beta club, a number of things that involve our students, an overnight stay, and not having to go through executive committee to get that, but to grant those clubs, organizations, teams. Now, athletics is only during the state tournament season. The other ones would be competitions, Skills USA in Chattanooga, national convention, that sort of thing.
I make a motion to approve that the director has that authority.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The next board meeting will be on August 18th at 5 o'clock. Before I take a motion on to adjourn, I would just like to revisit the library policy handbook. I just want to let the board know and everybody on record saying that tonight we did not oppose or turn down this handbook policy. We just did not accept to have it on today's agenda. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.